Hey, Dr. Mehler coming at you with more bad news. Not so bad this time. Actually, we're going to be talking about the progressive era in American history, chapter 18. This is a period of enormous change. That's so different than now. This is after the Civil War. There was an explosion of growth between 1870 and 1900. The United States went from being kind of a third world nation to being the number one economy in the world. We weren't the most powerful nation in the world. We had we had no army basically. I mean, we had a military that was out in the West in Utah and New Mexico and stuff. And every once in a while they fought Indians. But if we had gotten into a war with Chile, for example, little Latin American country, they had a fabulous navy. They would have beat the crap out of us. So we weren't militarily strong, but we didn't want to be, and we had basically no navy and a very small military after the Civil War. During the Civil War, because we had this enormous military, but there was a tremendous transformation that was taking place in the nation. We started off as a nation of farmers. In George Washington's day, 99% of all American workers were farmers, and they owned farms, and they were mostly independent farmers. It was very different than Europe. In America, there were no peasants. In England, you had a whole population of people who were farmers, but they didn't own any land. They were called peasants because they didn't own any land. In America, farmers, they basically mostly owned their own farms, unless they were slaves. There was a small population of farm workers who didn't own their own land, but most Americans were in agriculture. Most Americans lived in rural areas. This is America. It was a small, backward, rural, agricultural nation. And after the Civil War, the Industrial Revolution really kicked in high gear. And by 1900, the majority of Americans, not a huge majority, but a majority of Americans are now living in cities rather than in rural areas. There's an enormous immigration. Millions and millions of people are coming to the United States. In fact, between about 1880 and 1920, it was the largest migration in all of human history. In all of human history, between 1880 and 1920, was the largest migration of human beings from all over the world. And they came from all over the world to the United States, because this was the golden land of opportunity, and we just had this enormous immigration population coming in. So you have exploding cities, an exploding population, an exploding industrial economy. I mean, things are looking good. Everything is wonderful, but there are all kinds of problems that have emerged from all of this growth. For example, the cities are being transformed, and you have all these people moving in. So you have construction, building a very cheap tenements that immigrants could move into. They're very inexpensively done. They have no hot water. They're cold water flats. You have no elevators to walk up. They have no fire escapes, so they're fire traps, and people are just packed all together. And there's crime, disease, poverty. I mean, it's just like there's a mess out there that's a result of all this incredible expansion and growth. So the two things that are happening. One is that there are people who are realizing that in the old days, before the progressive era, the government that governed best governed least. That was what Thomas Jefferson had said. Government should not be doing a whole lot of stuff. For example, the federal government should have nothing to do with your health care. It should have nothing to do with your education. Look, you go to church and you go to school, these things are private institutions. The federal government maintains an army to make sure we don't get attacked, makes treaties with foreign countries, things like that. But the federal government doesn't do all of the things that the federal government today does. It didn't do. That's the progressive era. So in the progressive era, you have all of these emerging problems, and a group of professional social workers, politicians, intellectuals say, we have to change our philosophy from the government that governs best governs least to we got to make rules and regulations to, for example, these tenement houses catch on fire all the time and everybody burns alive in them because there's no way to get out except jumping out the window and hitting the pavement. We need to have a law that mandates, tell builders they're going to have to put fire escapes on their buildings so that people, there's a fire, people can get out the fire escape and come down the fire escape. And, there was animal run society. We didn't have cars. The society was run by horses. And if you know anything about horses, you know that they also have something that comes out the rear end. It's not gas, it's more solid than that. And it's all over the cities. So there's a real mess that occurs when your entire transportation system is animal driven and you've got a big city. So one of the things that happens is everyday occurrence in the city is you see some really down and out delivery man with a horse and a wagon, and he's got a bunch of coal or something in the back of the wagon, and he's supposed to deliver and then going up a hill, and his horse is all skin and bones, and he's whacking it, and it just isn't going to make it. And then the horse, collapses, and he's now really frustrated. So he gets out there and he starts just beating the horse to death on the street, And you walk by and you say, "Hey, buddy, yeah, And he said, "Mind your own business. This is my horse. I want to kill him, I can kill him. There's no law against that, right?" Well, there wasn't until Henry Burke came along and said, "You know what? We really need to have a law against that. We need to have a law that regulates the treatment of animals." So Henry Burke started the American Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals in the progressive era. It was a big progressive kind of thing. That horse that got beaten to death, he weighs 1,100 pounds, 2,400 pounds. I don't know what he weighs, but he's on the street. And now you have a problem of how are you going to get him out of there? And you also have, this horse fell into, how they dig holes in the street, to fix the plumbing or whatever. And this horse fell in. So the horse is in the hole. So Henry Burke came up with a really great idea, an ambulance service that had a hoist, and a triangle, and they would put this thing over and they could hoist up the horse. If the horse was alive, they could just transfer it into the ambulance and take it away to a vet to take care of it. There were some people in New York City who were looking at this and saying, that's really a good idea. My uncle fell down on the street the other day, and boy, I tell you, having an ambulance service to come and pick up people who fell on the street would be a good idea too. So from the reform of forming the ASPCA, there emerged this whole reform for people in ambulance service to pick up people in ambulance service to take care of animals, laws to make living safer in the city, especially for making sure that people had pure water to drink. The garbage was collected, that you dealt with illnesses that emerged, that make sure everybody got inoculated, and to vaccines is not new. In the American Revolution, there was this big smallpox epidemic, and George Washington ordered all of his soldiers to be vaccinated. So the progressive era is a moment in American history where we're trying to address a total transformation of the country from a kind of sleepy agricultural nation to a absolutely first-rate industrial nation. And so that's sort of the progressive era, and progressives introduce all kinds of new regulations to make an industrial society move more smoothly and safely. For the workers, there was also a big problem because the thing of this transformation, you were a farmer. You were born and grew up on a farm, and now you have moved to the city and you have a job in a factory. So before this, as I said, with the guilds, you had a lot of freedom. Now, what you're going to want to do is turn to a union. So the progressive era was the period when you had the first modern unions being formed. The very first union we talked about is the Knights of Labor, and the Knights of Labor was kind of an idea that anyone who worked should be part of a grand workers union, and some other people came up with an idea that instead of that, why don't we have trade unions? That is, let's get electricians all together, and they'll form a union, an electricians union, of a plumbers union, of a brick builders union. Those are trade unions, and those trade unions will all get together and form a federation, the American Federation of Labor, which will be a union of unions. And there's all the trade unions will get together and they'll be all one union. Now, you had also at this time the IWW, the International Workers of the World. They were radical workers. They were revolutionary workers, and they believed in transformation of the economic system. They thought that workers were being exploited, and the only way to end that exploitation would be to transform the capitalist system itself. They were radicals. They pretty much got exterminated. And then late in the progressive era, actually after the progressive era, you have the formation of industrial unions that covered entire industries. So you'd have the auto workers, union, and everybody in the factory would be part of that union, whether you were working on the assembly line or you were a janitor. Everybody was an auto worker union person. So that's the unions. And these unions emerged in this period. This is the beginning of the foundation of American labor unions. So the progressive era is really an exciting moment in American history. Chapter 18 is going to deal with that. I think this is an introduction, and I will leave it to you to ask any questions that you have as we go along. We are now going to be meeting in face-to-face once a week and Zoom once a week. So you do now have an opportunity. I have to say, after reading all the journals, how I really didn't appreciate how desperately, you want things to return to normal. I mean, the overwhelming thing that I got out of reading all of these journals, and I'm finally catching up. By the way, I've finally finished reading all of week 1 journals, and I'm getting through, the next ones are much easier. But the first ones I really wanted to read carefully, and I have snips of all of them for each class, and I'm going to edit it and post it so you can see what people had to say. But one thing that came through to me that I didn't realize was how desperately you all want to come back to class and you want things to be normal. And so we'll give it a shot. There's also, I mean, people are worried. Yeah, I'm surprised we're still here. And so we're all sharing this same concern. We don't want to have to go back into lockdown. People want to breathe. And so many students said, it's just depressing and I can't focus and, motivation's a problem. I want to come to class. So here we are, we're going to come to class, and I'm going to open up Zoom classes on the alternate days so that we'll have ample opportunity to discuss things. What that's going to mean is you will have ample opportunity to think about things that bother you, that you have a question about. Maybe you just want to offer your own interpretation or idea, suggestion. Hey, we're open for business now for as long as we have. By this time, you must understand that I am a total pessimist, and I don't believe we have any hope whatsoever for a future. But you must have also noticed that I'm not depressed. I think that we can survive without hope. I know it's a strange thing to think about, but it's like everything we ever thought we knew for sure turned out to be completely wrong. I think this is one of those things that look, we're all going to die. Everybody is going to die, and yet for most of us, that doesn't bring us down. We still, in fact, it motivates us to grab every day, to make the most of life that we have. And, I'm 75 and I'm going to die. But before I do, I want to have as much enjoyment as I possibly can. I want to help you out if I can. It's like you're young, I'm old. You're starting, I'm finishing. And I understand. I mean, I wish I could. I wish I could make the world a better place for you. But I'm going to try to help you on your way. And I just don't think that false hope is a way to go. I mean, I think that we have to be realistic about the fact that our civilization is coming to an end. That's the book that we're reading at the end of the semester, is The Collapse of Western Civilization. So I think that our civilization is coming to an end. I think that the American Republic is collapsing. I think the American Empire is collapsing. I think I made it clear that this is not a country, this is an empire. We have an empire here, and that empire is collapsing. And I think that we're in the middle of a mass extinction event, which is going to take us down, and this planet is not going to have any life on it. And we've done it. It's tragic. But all that horribly despicable, terrible, depressing stuff aside, here we are. Here we are. We still have a little time left, and you still have your dreams. I still have mine, and we're going to move forward with our show, More Bad News. And remember, take the Camels Challenge. The Camels Challenge is, don't believe what people tell you about smoking camels. Take the Camels Challenge. The Camels Challenge is this: smoke camels for 30 days and see for yourself if camels doesn't improve your life. Then you can say, I didn't listen to anybody. I took the Camels Challenge. I smoked camels for 30 days, and my goodness, it did improve my life way more than I had thought it could. So with that thought, I'll leave you and see you later on this afternoon, actually. This is for my 3 o'clock class, but I'll play it tomorrow at 9:30 as well. Bye-bye.